Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been working the drive-thru during the dinner rush when this couple pulled up to the speaker around 7 o'clock. The guy started ordering and didn't stop for a while. Tacos, burritos, nachos, quesadillas, extra sides, drinks, the whole deal. When he finally finished, I rang everything up and it came out to about $40. Then he added one more thing. He asked if we sold gift cards. I told him we did. He said he wanted a $60 one. I pulled a fresh card from the drawer and activated it in the system. The total updated on my screen and I read it back to him. $100 even for the food and the gift card combined. He said that sounded good and they pulled around to the window. I opened it up and had their receipt ready. That's when things got weird. The guy asked if they could use the gift card to pay for their order. I stared at him for a second because I thought maybe I misheard. I asked him to repeat that. The woman in the passenger seat leaned over. She said they wanted to apply the gift card balance to their total. I blinked a few times. I asked if they were saying they wanted to use the gift card they just ordered to pay for the food they just ordered. The guy nodded like it was the most normal thing in the world. He told me to just take the $40 off the gift card balance. I felt a headache starting to build behind my eyes already. I explained that they hadn't paid for the gift card yet. The woman looked confused. She asked what that had to do with anything. She said, the card was activated so I should just use it. I rubbed my forehead and tried to stay patient. I told them that the gift card had to be paid for before they could use it. Otherwise, they'd be getting their food for free. The guy scoffed. He said the card was already in the system, so what was the problem? I took a breath and explained it step by step. I said if I let them use the $60 gift card without them paying for it first, they'd be leaving with $40 worth of food and a $20 gift card balance, all without spending a single cent. That was essentially stealing. The woman crossed her arms. She said I was being difficult and that other restaurants let them do this all the time. I seriously doubted that was true, but I didn't say it out loud. I apologized and told them that wasn't our policy. I explained they needed to pay for both the food and the gift card, and then they could use the card for future visits. The guy leaned back in his seat looking annoyed. He said this was taking way too long. He asked if I could just process it so they could leave. I stayed calm and repeated that I couldn't give them their order until they paid. If they wanted the gift card, they'd have to pay the full $100. Then they could use the remaining $20 on the card whenever they came back. The woman huffed and told the guy this was ridiculous. The guy muttered something I couldn't quite hear. Then he said fine, but this was the dumbest thing he'd ever dealt with. I looked at my screen and saw 4 cars lined up behind them now. My manager was probably watching the cameras and wondering what was taking so long. I told them their total one more time. $100 even. The guy finally pulled out his card and shoved it through the window. I ran it through the reader and waited for it to process. It went through. I handed him the receipt, the activated gift card, and both bags of food. The woman leaned over one last time. She said I should have just done what they asked because it really wasn't that complicated. I forced a smile and told them to have a great evening. I closed the window before they could say anything else. They sat there for another few seconds, like they were debating whether to keep arguing. Eventually they drove off. I let out a long breath and leaned against the counter. My co-worker walked over from the prep station. She asked what just happened. I explained the whole thing, how they wanted to use a gift card to pay for their food before actually paying for the gift card itself. She stared at me. She asked me to say that again because it didn't make sense. I repeated it. She laughed and said that was literally just them trying to steal. I nodded. She asked if they really thought that would work. I told her they seemed genuinely confused when I said no, like they couldn't understand why I wouldn't just hand over free food. She shook her head and went back to the grill. I grabbed my water bottle from under the counter and took a long drink. Then I pulled out some ibuprofen from my bag in the back and swallowed 2 pills. The headache was already settling in and I knew it was going to stick around for a while. The next car pulled up to the speaker. I put on my customer service voice and took their order: two crunchy tacos and a large drink. Simple and straightforward. I told them the total was $6.53. They said okay and pulled around. When they got to the window, they handed me their card without any weird requests or complaints. I processed the payment, handed them their food, and they thanked me before driving off. I looked at the clock on the wall. 3 more hours left in my shift. I rubbed my temples and wondered if the ibuprofen was going to be enough. Probably not. But at least the rest of the night couldn't get worse than someone trying to scam free tacos with the most backwards logic I'd ever heard. I really hope that couple didn't come back. And if they did, I hoped someone else was working the window. I got pregnant at 18. My oldest kid is also 18 now, which means we grew up together. People comment on how close we are, like we're more friends than parent and child. And yet we do a lot together. Shopping trips, movie nights, random drives to get coffee at midnight. It's been us against the world. But lately I've started to notice something. If I do anything without my oldest, even something small like getting my nails done or grabbing lunch with a coworker, they get upset. Not just disappointed, angry, like I've personally betrayed them. I have 4 kids total. My oldest, then my 15-year-old son, and 2 younger daughters. Between work and making sure everyone's fed and keeping the house from falling apart, I don't get much time for myself. So when my work announced they were throwing a Christmas party, I got a little excited. A night out with my husband, some music, maybe a few drinks, just a chance to be an adult for a few hours. The day before the party, my oldest helped me pick out a dress. We went to 3 different stores before finding the right one. They gave me opinions on everything, vetoing anything too boring or too flashy. It was fun. That evening before I left, they helped me with my jewelry and gave me advice on my hair. We were laughing and joking around. Everything felt normal. My 2 daughters were at their dad's place for the weekend, so it was just my oldest and their brother at home. No babysitting required. Both of them are old enough to manage on their own for a few hours. Before I left, my oldest asked me what time I'd be home. I told them I wasn't sure if I'd leave early or not, but the party ended at 10. They seemed fine with that answer. Nodded, told me to have fun, the whole thing. My husband and I headed out. The party was nice. There was a DJ, a buffet. Some of my co-workers brought their partners. I danced for the first time in months. My feet hurt from my heels, but I didn't even care. I checked my phone pretty often throughout the night, just to make sure nobody needed me. No calls, no texts. Everything was quiet. At 10:02, when the party officially wrapped up, I pulled out my phone again. 2 missed calls. One at 10:01, one at 10:02, and an incoming call lighting up my screen right then. I answered. My oldest voice came through immediately, sharp and angry. They demanded to know where I was and why I didn't answer. I told them the party just ended and I was putting my phone away. I asked what was wrong and they said I told them I'd be home early. I corrected them, saying I only mentioned the party ended at 10 and never promised to leave early. They shot back that this was the 3rd time they called and what if there was an emergency. I asked if there was an emergency. They said that wasn't the point and that I should have been home because I'm a mother first. I felt something twist in my chest. Not guilt, something else. Frustration maybe, or just exhaustion. I told them I'd given them the end time and checked my phone all night. There was no emergency. I asked what was going on. They told me to forget it and just come home. Then they hung up. The drive home was silent. My husband tried to say something comforting, but I wasn't listening. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. When I got home, my oldest was in their room with the door shut. I knocked and asked if we could talk about this. They said no, and I said I didn't do anything wrong and that I'd told them what time the party ended. They said I always do this, always pick myself over them. I said that wasn't fair and that I'm allowed to go out sometimes. They told me whatever and to leave me alone. I stood there outside their door for a minute, then gave up and went to bed. The next day, they still wouldn't talk to me. I tried making their favorite breakfast. Nothing. I asked if they wanted to watch a movie later. They ignored me. By the afternoon, I was starting to feel genuinely upset. I told them I didn't understand why they were this angry. I went to a work party. I was gone for a few hours. I didn't miss any emergencies. I didn't know what they wanted from me. My oldest finally looked up from their phone. They said they wanted me to care about being here, but that I'd rather be out drinking and dancing like I don't have kids waiting for me. I said that wasn't true and that I check on them constantly and I'm always here. They said, except when I'm not. I told them I can't just stay home forever and that I need to have a life too. Then they said maybe I shouldn't have had kids so young. That one hit me like a punch to the stomach. I didn't even know what to say. I just walked out of the room before I said something I'd regret. My son found me in the kitchen a little while later. He said his sibling was being ridiculous. I said I didn't know what I did wrong. He told me I didn't do anything wrong and that they're just mad I have fun without them sometimes. He said it's weird. I said we've been close. He replied, yeah, but that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to leave the house. He said they need to chill. I wanted to believe him, but part of me kept wondering if maybe I was the problem. Maybe I should have come home earlier. Maybe I should have answered the phone faster. Maybe I'm just failing at this whole mom thing. But then I think about how I checked my phone all night, how I told them exactly when the party ended, how there was no emergency, and I start to feel angry instead of guilty. I'm 36 years old. I have 4 kids. I work full-time and I barely get 5 minutes to myself most days. And the one time I go out and try to enjoy something, I get punished for it. I don't know what to do. My oldest is still giving me the silent treatment. My husband says I shouldn't apologize because I didn't do anything wrong, but I hate this tension in the house. So I guess I'm asking, was I wrong? Should I have come home earlier? How do I fix this without just giving up on ever having time for myself again? My husband had been sick for months, stage 4 cancer. The doctors gave him weeks, maybe days. I'd taken leave from work to care for him full time, and most of my days were spent upstairs in our bedroom, helping him eat, managing his medications, and just being there. He didn't have much time left, and I wanted every second with him to count. That evening he'd finally fallen asleep after a rough day. The pain had been worse than usual, and it took hours to get him comfortable. I was exhausted, drained. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, and it was already past 8 at night. I pulled out my phone and ordered Chinese food from a place that delivered, paid online, added a 20% tip through the app like I always did, came out to about $6 on a $30 order. Everything was taken care of. I specifically selected the leave at door option because I couldn't risk leaving my husband alone for long. He'd been having trouble breathing, and I needed to stay close. The food was supposed to arrive between 8:30 and 8:45. I set my phone on the nightstand and sat back down next to my husband, holding his hand while he slept. Then the doorbell rang. Once, twice, 3 times in quick succession. I checked my phone. 8:32. That must be the delivery. I figured they'd just leave it and go like I requested. My husband stirred slightly but didn't wake. I waited. The doorbell rang again, and again, and again. It was constant. Someone was holding their finger on the button. My husband's eyes fluttered open, confusion clouding his face. I told him it was okay, that it was just someone at the door and he should go back to sleep. But the ringing wouldn't stop. It was relentless. My husband started getting agitated, his breathing becoming labored. I couldn't let this continue. I stood up, frustration building in my chest, and hurried downstairs. Through the front door window, I could see a woman in her 40s standing on my porch. She had her phone out and was filming my door. The food bag sat on the ground next to her feet. She saw me approaching and rang the bell 3 more times. I yanked the door open. I asked her what was wrong with her and reminded her that I'd selected leave at door. She looked me up and down with this smug expression. Phone still pointed at my house. She demanded to know where her tip was. I explained that I'd tipped through the app, 20%, $6, and told her she didn't need to ring the bell at all. I mentioned my husband was very sick and she'd just woken him up. She said she didn't see any tip on her end. She called me a liar. I said I wasn't lying and told her to check with her company. I explained that I'd paid and tipped online and everything was already handled. I even offered to show her the receipt on my phone. She scoffed and said I was just like everyone else who claimed that. She called me cheap. She said people like me always stiffed drivers and made up excuses. My hands were shaking. I could hear my husband coughing upstairs, that awful wet sound that meant he was struggling. I told her I needed to go because my husband needed me. I asked her to please leave. She refused to leave until I gave her a real tip. Cash. Right now. At least $10, she said. I repeated that I'd already tipped her and didn't have cash. I begged her to just go. I started to close the door, but she jammed her foot in the doorway. She told me not to dare shut the door on her. She yelled that she drove all the way here and I owed her. She said I was wasting her time and costing her money. I warned her to get off my property or I was calling the police. She laughed and said I wouldn't do anything. She pulled her foot back and I shut the door, locking it immediately. My heart was pounding. I turned to head back upstairs to my husband. Then I heard it. Shouting, cursing, the sound of something being thrown. I looked through the window and my stomach dropped. She had picked up the bags of food and was smashing them against my porch railing. Containers burst open, fried rice and noodles exploding everywhere. She grabbed the soup containers and threw them at my front door. The liquid splattered across the wood and window. Then she started stomping on everything, grinding the food into my welcome mat, kicking it across the porch. She picked up the fortune cookies and crushed them under her heel. She was screaming the entire time, calling me a cheap liar and saying she hoped I choked on it. She said I deserved everything bad that happened to me. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The operator answered and I explained what was happening, that a delivery driver was destroying my property and refusing to leave, that my husband was dying upstairs and I needed help. The operator said police were on their way and to stay inside. She asked if I was in immediate danger. I told her the woman was still outside destroying my food and screaming. The operator stayed on the line with me. The woman finally noticed me on the phone through the window. She gave me the finger and screamed that I was going to regret this. She said she'd make sure everyone knew what kind of person I was. Then she got in her car and sped off, but not before I got a clear shot of her license plate through the doorbell camera. The police arrived about 12 minutes later. I showed them the doorbell footage. It had captured everything. Her ringing the bell non-stop for almost 2 full minutes. Our conversation at the door. Her screaming. Her destroying the food. Her threatening me. All of it. Crystal clear audio and video. The officers took my statement and asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes without hesitation. They got copies of the footage and left to find her. One of the officers told me this wasn't the first complaint they'd received about aggressive delivery drivers, but this was by far the worst incident. I called the delivery company next, explained what happened and sent them the video too. The manager was horrified. He apologized over and over. He said this behavior was completely unacceptable and violated every company policy. He promised immediate action and said he'd personally handle the situation. He asked for my bank information to refund the order right away. $32.50 went back into my account within the hour. I cleaned up the mess on my porch the best I could, then went back upstairs to my husband. He was awake, looking worried. He asked what had happened. I told him it was nothing important, just someone being ridiculous. I said not to worry about it, but he knew me too well. He could see I was upset. He could see the food stains on my clothes from cleaning the porch. I didn't tell him the full details. He didn't need that stress. I just said the delivery person had a meltdown and the police were handling it. He squeezed my hand and told me he was sorry I had to deal with that. I told him it wasn't his fault and that everything was fine now. The police called me back around at 10:45. They'd found her at her apartment about 20 minutes away. She'd answered the door still in her delivery uniform. They arrested her on the spot. She'd been charged with vandalism, harassment, and disturbing the peace. She spent the night in jail. Her bail was set at $500. The delivery company called me again the next morning. They'd fired her effective immediately. They said they'd also banned her from ever working with any of their partner restaurants or delivery services. They offered additional compensation beyond the refund. $200 for the damage to my porch and door. Another $100 for the distress and inconvenience. I accepted. 3 days later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from her, not an apology. A rant about how I'd ruined her life over $6, how she'd lost her job and had a criminal record now, how I should be ashamed of myself. I took a photo of it and sent it to the police. They added it to the case file as evidence of continued harassment. I posted the doorbell footage online about a week later, just to document what happened. I didn't expect it to blow up the way it did. Within 2 days, it had over 3 million views. News outlets picked it up, local stations, then national ones. People were outraged on my behalf. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. Some people shared their own horror stories about aggressive delivery drivers. Others praised me for standing up for myself. The delivery company reached out again when they saw the media coverage. They sent an executive to my house with a formal apology. They offered an additional $500 in compensation, gift cards to dozens of restaurants, free delivery for a year. I accepted the money but declined the free delivery. I told them I wouldn't be using their service anymore. The criminal case moved forward. She pled guilty to avoid trial. She was sentenced to 30 days in jail, though she only served 15, 1 year of probation, 200 hours of community service, and she had to pay restitution for the damage to my property, $475. My husband passed away 3 weeks after that night, peacefully, in his sleep, with me holding his hand. I think about that night sometimes, how someone could be so cruel over something so trivial, how she had no idea what was happening in my life, what I was going through, and how she didn't care anyway. Even when I told her my husband was sick, even when she could hear him coughing upstairs, she still chose to make everything worse. The doorbell camera is still there, still recording, just in case. But I don't order delivery anymore. I can't. Every time I think about it, I see her face, hear her screaming, see the food splattered across my door. Some things you just don't forget. 2017 was not a great year for me. A few months before this incident, I was at work when a delivery truck backed into me in the parking lot. The driver didn't see me and I didn't see him until it was too late. The impact shattered my hip, and after months of dealing with the pain and trying every conservative treatment option my doctor could think of, we finally decided surgery was the only answer. So there I was, 4 days into my hospital stay, after getting my hip replaced, finally cleared to go home. I was 32 years old and felt like I'd aged about 40 years in less than a week. The pain medication made everything feel floaty and disconnected, but I was just so relieved to be leaving that sterile room with its beeping machines and terrible food. My husband picked me up that afternoon, helping me shuffle slowly to the car with my walker. Once we got me settled in the passenger seat with about 17 pillows positioned around me, I made a request that probably seemed insane. I asked if we could stop at Target on the way home. My husband looked at me like I'd suggested we climb Mount Everest. He asked if I was being serious, since I'd just had major surgery 4 days ago. I told him I knew that, but I really needed some things. I needed bandages for the incision, some decent snacks, since I hadn't eaten anything good in days, and a new pillow to prop my leg up because the hospital ones were terrible. He sighed, but he's a good man, so he agreed. We pulled into the Target parking lot about 50 minutes later. This store was my second home. Before the accident, I stopped there at least 3 times a week. I knew every aisle, every end cap, probably better than some of the actual employees. When we got inside, I insisted on using a regular wheelchair instead of the electric cart. I don't know why. Maybe some stubborn part of me wanted to feel less helpless than I already did. My husband grabbed one from the entrance and helped me ease down into it, which took about 5 minutes because every movement sent sharp pains through my hip despite the medication. We started making our way through the store. I had a mental list of what I needed, and we headed toward the health and beauty section first. That's when it started. A woman in her 50s approached us, looking a bit flustered. She asked if my husband knew where she could find the batteries. My husband looked confused for a second, then pointed and told her they were in the electronics section, back that way and to the left. The woman thanked him and apologized for bothering him when he was clearly already helping someone. She smiled at me and hurried off. My husband shrugged and kept pushing me toward the bandages. I grabbed what I needed and we moved on to the snack aisle. That's where customer number 2 found us. This time it was a younger guy, maybe in his 20s. He asked my husband if they had any of those Bluetooth speakers in the back since the shelf was empty. My husband told him he didn't work there and apologized. The young guy realized his mistake and said it was his bad, explaining that the shirt had thrown him off. He apologized and walked away. That's when I actually looked at what my husband was wearing. Red polo shirt, tan khaki pants. I almost started laughing despite the pain. I pointed out to him that he was dressed exactly like a Target employee. He disagreed, saying he wasn't because he didn't have a name tag. I told him that was the only thing missing. He looked down at himself and I could see the realization dawning on his face. But we kept chopping because I still needed my pillow and some other items. Over the next 20 minutes, people kept approaching us. An elderly man asked where the greeting cards were. A mom with 2 kids wanted to know if we carried a specific brand of diapers. A teenage girl needed help finding the cosmetics section. Every single time my husband patiently helped them, and every single time they apologized for interrupting when they could see he was already busy helping me. I directed most of them from my wheelchair, my brain foggy from the painkillers, but my target knowledge still intact. After the 10th or 11th person, my husband seemed genuinely baffled. He wondered out loud why everyone kept asking him for help, questioning if he just had a helpful face or something. I started giggling, which hurt my hip, but I couldn't stop. I explained that it was the outfit. He was wearing the exact Target uniform with a red shirt and tan pants. He looked like he worked there. He protested again that he didn't have a name tag. I told him that apparently that didn't matter. He was a Target employee today. By the time we made it to the pillows, we'd been approached by 14 different customers. 14 in 30 minutes. And here's the thing that actually surprised me. Every single one of them was nice about it. They apologized when they realized he was busy with me. They thanked him for his help. Nobody got rude or demanding. We finally made it to the checkout with my snacks, my bandages, and a really nice memory foam pillow that I was pretty sure would change my life. When we were leaving, one last customer stopped us near the exit. An older woman told my husband that she just wanted to say he'd been so helpful to everyone that day. She said he was a credit to the store. My husband explained that he actually didn't work there. The woman looked mortified, apologized, and rushed away. My husband just shook his head when he loaded everything into the car and helped me get settled again. The whole ride home, he kept muttering about his shirt choice. When we got to the house, the first thing he did after getting me inside was go change into a blue shirt. He refused to wear that red polo for months afterward. I still tease him about his brief career as an unofficial Target employee. Those 14 customers got better service than they probably would have from some actual workers, all because my husband picked the wrong outfit on hospital pickup day. I grew up watching my uncle fix everything with his hands: cars, leaky faucets, broken chairs. Didn't matter what it was. He never complained, never made a big deal out of helping people. When I was around 12, my bike chain snapped in the middle of a ride, and I walked it 3 miles to his garage. He dropped what he was doing, got me a soda, and had me back on the road in 20 minutes. That's just how he was. So when he passed last month, it hit everyone hard. The whole family came together to organize the wake at Henderson Funeral Home, this older building with dark wood paneling and thick carpets that muffled footsteps. They set us up in the main viewing room, and off to the side was this small lounge area with a couple coffee urns, bottled water, and trays of sandwiches someone from the family had ordered. The wake was scheduled to run from 2 p.m. until 7 p.m. We got there early to set everything up. I couldn't sit still. The chairs felt wrong, the small talk felt wrong, everything felt wrong. My aunt kept crying every few minutes, and I didn't know what to say to her. My cousins were huddled together looking at old photos on someone's phone. I just needed to move. So I started straightening things in the lounge, refilled the coffee pot when it got low, stacked the napkins that people had scattered everywhere, threw away empty cups, wiped down the tables when someone spilled cream. It wasn't my job or anything, I just needed something to do with my hands. I was wearing a plain black button-up shirt and black dress pants, same as half the men there. Standard funeral attire. Nothing fancy, nothing that stood out. I was rearranging the sandwich platters when I heard someone clear their throat behind me. I turned around and saw this woman I'd never met before. 50s maybe, blonde hair sprayed into place, wearing too much perfume. She had this expectant look on her face, like she'd been waiting for me to notice her. She waved me over with this lazy flick of her wrist and asked me to bring her a plate with just the turkey sandwiches and no mayo. I laughed. I thought she was making a joke, trying to lighten the mood or something. Her face didn't change. She told me hello and asked if I could hear her. Then she snapped her fingers, snapped them at me like I was a dog, and called me service. I told her I didn't work there and that I was family. She looked me up and down, and I swear her lip curled. Then she said that if I was family, I should really be serving my guests better. I just stood there with my mouth half open. My brain couldn't process what she just said. This woman, who I'd never seen before in my life, at my uncle's wake, was lecturing me about hospitality. I asked her if she was serious right now. She said someone needed to keep things running smoothly and that this was a very difficult time for everyone. I told her yeah, it was, and that's why I was here burying my uncle. She blinked at me like I'd said something confusing, then turned and walked back to her seat near the window. I watched her settle in, cross her legs, and pull out her phone. Just completely unbothered. I went back to the main room and found my cousin Derek. I asked him who the blonde woman by the windows was. He said he had no idea and that he thought she came with our uncle's work people. We asked around. Nobody knew her. She wasn't on the sign-in sheet. Someone thought maybe she was a neighbor of my uncle's, but his neighbors were an elderly couple and a guy in his 30s who ran a landscaping business. None of them matched. My mom said she'd never seen her before. My dad shrugged and said maybe she was from the funeral home staff, but the funeral director had introduced all his staff when we arrived, and she wasn't one of them. She'd just walked in off the street. I tried to ignore her for the next hour. I sat with my family, looked at photos, hugged people I hadn't seen in years, but I kept catching glimpses of her. She went back to the lounge twice, got more coffee, ate 4 sandwiches, helped herself to the cookies my cousin had brought, made herself completely at home. At one point she even rearranged some of the chairs to make more room for herself, moved a whole row of them to the side so she could stretch her legs out. Around 4:30 p.m. I saw her walk up to the guest book and flip through it like she was reading a magazine, just casually browsing through everyone's condolences. My aunt noticed too and gave me this confused look, but she was too exhausted to deal with it. Near the end of the wake, when people were starting to gather their things and say goodbyes, she approached me again. I was standing near the guest book, and she walked right up with her purse clutched in both hands. She looked around like she was checking if anyone was watching, then pulled out a crumpled $5 bill. She pressed it toward my hand and leaned in close. She whispered that it was for my trouble, like she was doing me this enormous favor, like she was being generous. I didn't take the money. I just looked at her, didn't say a word, didn't move. I just stared directly into her eyes. She stood there with her arm extended, smile frozen on her face. 5 seconds passed. 10. Her smile started to crack. Her hand wavered. She started to say she was just trying to do something, but trailed off. I kept staring. She stuffed the bill back into her purse so fast she almost dropped it. Her face went red. She said something about how rude people were these days, loud enough for a few people nearby to hear. My cousin Sarah turned around and asked if everything was okay. The woman didn't answer, just turned and speed-walked toward the exit, heels clicking on the floor. Sarah appeared at my elbow and asked what that was about. I said I had no idea. I really had no idea. She said the woman looked like she was about to cry. I said, good. The funeral director came over a few minutes later and asked if everything was all right. The woman had complained to him on her way out that the family was being very rude to volunteers. The director was confused because they hadn't arranged for any volunteers. I explained what happened. He apologized, said sometimes people wander in from other services or community groups that use the building. He'd never seen anything quite like this though. He said he'd make a note to keep better track of who comes in during services. I didn't tell the rest of my family about it right away. They had enough to deal with. But Derek found out from Sarah And by the time we got to the post-wake dinner at my aunt's house, half the family knew. They couldn't believe it. My mom was horrified and asked why I didn't come get her. I told her there was no point, the woman was already gone. My dad thought it was hilarious and kept asking if I'd kept the $5. My aunt shook her head and said my uncle would have laughed his head off at the story. She said he probably would have given the woman an actual job to do just to mess with her. That made me feel a little better. Derek said he wished he'd been there to see it. He said he would have asked her to start washing dishes. My younger cousin asked if we thought she did this at other funerals. Just wandered in, ate free food, and pretended to be helpful. That thought made everyone go quiet for a second. We all realized she probably did. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.